guys, it's Tina Lugasi here from Heirloom Designs, and welcome to the 5th lesson on Mastering the Nativity Scene Series. And today we're going to be focusing on Mary and little baby Jesus. So these are the finished figures. So what you're going to need for this is the pattern printed on sheets of sulky. You could also try your freehanding this embroidery because it is quite simple. I'll just leave that up to you. That's printed at full scale. There's a 3-inch scale bar down here, so just double check when you print that you have this size to 100% on your printer when you go to print it. The next thing you're going to need is the felt. This is wool blend felt, and it has been pre-shrunk. So even if you bought the kit, you do need to pre-shrink your felt. Then I've got it's just a few embroidery colors that you need on this one. And then beads, we've got a 20mm, a 12, and 2 8mm beads. The hair, she's got just a nice chestnut brown hair. You're going to need 2 pipe cleaners. If you're going to be drawing the face yourself, you need a red and a black Sakura Jelly Roll markers, and these are both number 8s. They work really well for doing the faces. You're going to need some other materials for this one. We've got the coffee stained cheesecloth, and this time you're going to need some coffee stained muslin or cotton sheeting up in Canada. That's what we call it, but muslin works. And you're going to need to make this painted blue kind of aged piece of fabric, which we'll do together. So I'll show you all of that. And then in addition to these things, you need some rice, stuffing. For stuffing, I always use sheep wool stuffing if I can. I love it so much. I want a stuffing tool, white glue, hot glue gun, wire cutters, and just basic sewing supplies. To get started, I'm going to take my pattern pages and I'm going to cut roughly around each of these and then sort them for which ones need embroidery and which ones do not. All right, I'm back and I've got all of my pattern pieces roughly cut out. The baby Jesus and Mary face, we're just going to put those aside. Those are for reference if you need them for working on the faces. And then now I'm going to start with the body pieces, which I use beige for. So that would be the torso and the legs and the baby Jesus body. And with the sulky, you just peel it off the backing. The back end has an adhesive on it, and you just stick it onto your felt. All right, so there really is very little embroidery on Mary. So I'm just going to show you how to do these X's and then the stitch across, and that's pretty much all that you need for this. The other one is quite easy, and I'll show you how they relate. Just going to come in here with your blue and go over these markings for the X's. And then I do the top and bottom bands that are backstitched out of the same color. So from here, I can just go directly into that. So for the backstitch, I'll start this lower one first. I'll start in a bit from that corner and go back on myself, hence the name backstitch. And then back in that end, and then go forward. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way along. And then this top line also gets backstitched. Okay, so that's kind of how it looks. So then I'll finish this offline, and then I'm going to do the other arm as well. And the headscarf, all it needs are the X's made, and they are just a single stitch going each direction all along here. And after that, I'm going to cut all of these pattern pieces out around the outer edge, and then we can already start to assemble her. Before that, I'm going to take an interlude and I am going to show you how to paint the fabrics. All right, guys, I'm going to show you how I stain these fabrics. So if I were staining a cheesecloth, right here I've got a mix of coffee, and you can throw a splash of vanilla in for a nicer smell. It's 1 tablespoon of coffee to a half a cup of water I've got in here of instant coffee, and a splash of vanilla. And so when you do your coffee stained cheesecloth, you can imagine, I don't have a piece that isn't stained here, but you take it, you'll put it in here, you'll squish out the coffee mixture, and then you'll lay it out, and then you'll get something that kind of resembles this, and you'll just let that dry. So that's the coffee stained cheesecloth. Then for the coffee stained sheeting, because you're going to need this in several of the patterns, I'm just going to cut a piece. So this, again, this could be muslin. We just, for some reason, call it cotton sheeting up here. So I'm just going to put it in to that coffee mix, make sure it's all nice and soaked and that it's all getting covered, and pull it out. And again, you're going to scrunch it up, and then see it's got this bit of a stain look to it. But yeah, it's nicely coated. So yeah, and then you just let that dry. If you've got spots that it didn't catch, you can always take a paintbrush even and go over them, and then that'll dry. So you do need a small piece of that for Mary. And then I'm going to show you, because you also need a larger piece for her blue scarf. And I'm just going to take this piece. The dimensions are in the pattern, so you can just reference that. But for this piece, I'm going to take, I've got this Muted Aqua by Craftsmart. I like this color. I'm just looking for something kind of vintagey looking, kind of a baby blue, but like a little aged looking. And I'm also going to use my coffee stain in this. And what I'm going to do is actually pour some right on my, I'm just using an old like margarine lid or something. So basically I'm just kind of mixing these two together. Oh, I'm going to make sure you can see me a little better than that. Okay, and I'm kind of getting a bit of that coffee look and a bit of the blue. So it sort of looks aged. And notice I'm doing this on just an old towel because it will go through. I think I just hit the camera with my paintbrush because it's very long. Yes, I'm just making my way along, and I like to do this first, and then I'll rip off the piece that I need afterwards so that you get a nice kind of a frayed, aged look to the edge of it, and that should be good. So that, I just know that's probably a long enough piece, but like I said, reference the pattern, you'll know how long you need, and I would just paint a little bit bigger than that, and we'll just let all of that dry. So that's how you make all those interesting fabrics that we're throwing into the nativity scene. Hey guys, I'm back, and I have my Mary parts ready. So the majority of these parts just had to be cut around the outer line. And just to note that the torso front has these 2 notch marks. Those are not for cutting, those are just to indicate how far up you're sewing when you go to make the body. So then other than that, we just have the pieces to soak that have some sulky on them. So this is the arm. And my water, it's a lukewarm water bath. There is a little bit of sulky debris floating in it because I had just finished working on a figure. So in case you're wondering why my water isn't clear, I'm just taking off the excess sulky on this, and I'm going to put it in there, and that will dissolve off if you give it about 5 minutes in the water. And I just like to take off the extra because it keeps my water a bit cleaner if I'm working with a lot of embroidery pieces. And there's the headscarf. I'm just going to put it in as is, and I'm going to trim off these ones as well. Okay, so again, we're just going to give that 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. All right, so at this point, these should be ready to take off the rest of the sulky. So I'm just going to give a quick rub, not too aggressively, to take that off, and I'm going to lay it here to dry. Okay, so that's all those pieces ready. They just need to dry for a few hours or overnight, and when they're dry, then we'll come back and we'll keep working on Mary and baby Jesus. Hey guys, I am back, and I am ready to get going on this Mary figure. So we're going to start with the torso, and I've got my front and my back pieces. I'm just going to pull that sulky off, and like the other figures, I'm going to put one piece on top of the other, use this as a guide to see where I should start my whip stitching, and take my floss, and I'm going to whip stitch all around until about the same point on the opposite side. All right, and then once you do the whip stitch all the way around, you're going to take this figure, or the torso, and line up that side seam with the bottom seam as well as you can. Then you're going to take your ruler, and you're going to measure about 3/4 down from that point, which brings it to about there, and I'm going to do a running stitch along that spot, and I'm going to be going back and forth over it to make sure it's nice and strong, and then I'm going to repeat this on this other point over here. All right, so once you've done that to both sides here, you're going to flip this torso inside out. You're going to do it carefully because you don't want to blow through any of your seams by accident. I'm just going to push that through, okay? And then at this point you might use the end of a pencil or something just to make sure that you're fully opened up there. All right, and then you're going to take your piece of pipe cleaner and glue that in to the back, like so. And then you're going to take your stuffing, and you're going to start stuffing the torso. And once you get that bottom area nicely stuffed, come over to the side and continue your whip stitching until you get to this side. And then you're going to add more stuffing as you go and then you're going to keep stitching until you close this off. Okay, so you can see I've just come around here. I've got more stuffing I've added into that cavity, and I'm just going to throw in the last few stitches to close this off. Okay, so there's the torso finished. The next step is the legs. All right, so if you've been following along and you did the second wise man, you'll notice that this technique for the knees and the torso is the same thing. So basically I've got my two knees, I think I call them the legs, but either way, and I'm gonna whip stitch all the way around up to here, leaving this open, and then we're gonna fill it with rice. All right, so you can see that I have whip stitched all the way around, and I've filled this now with rice, and and I've kind of let the bottom flatten out a little bit. Just going to throw a little bit more in there, and then I'm going to now carefully come across the top here, and if you need to use your finger to help hold that rice in, and I'm just going to whip stitch across the top to close this off. So I am going to do this to the other leg. I will be back. All right, so you've got your two knees there and the torso. So we're gonna start by lining up these knees so that the backs and the fronts all match up. And I'm just gonna add a drop of glue in between to hold those together. Make sure that I'm pretty even on the back and on the bottom. And then your torso, that's where my pipe cleaner is. So that's gonna go at the back, and this is gonna get glued on there, just like this. And that's the basis of the figure right there. Okay, so while that dries, it gets put aside, and we're going to move on to the skirt. So I have the skirt pieces here. This is the way that you want your pieces oriented for sewing. I'm going to start on this side. So this piece I'm going to move aside. I'm going to take these two pieces and flip it, and I'm going to start to sew along this edge with a whip stitch. Okay, and then as I come around this curve, I'm going to curve my fabric and manipulate it so that I create this corner. It rounds the corner. And then I'm going to continue to match up my felt of the skirt with the felt of the leg. Okay, so that's the one side. And so then for this one, you're going to flip it like this. And again, follow that curve. And once you have sewn the skirt pieces all together, you're going to just follow the instructions that came with the Mary pattern and install that skirt over top of the completed body. Then you're going to go around to the back of the body and do a whip stitch along that back seam, stopping just before those cutouts where the shoes are going to go. All right, and then next you're going to be working on the boots. For the boots, you're going to just peel off that sulky, and you're going to do a whip stitch all the way around on the two boots, starting at the top corner, and as you round that curve, you're going to want to start to stuff the boot and continue whip stitching as you go. Hey guys, so I just had another camera disaster. I thought I was recording and I wasn't. So I finished up the boots and I have since glued them in this opening onto Mary. So that part's done. I am so sorry. And now for the tunic, I went ahead, and this is all in your pattern, so you can follow this along quite easily. But I have the left and the right sides of the tunic, and I have whip stitched along those shoulder seams to create these little openings for the arms. And I've moved them so that they're facing each other. And I am currently sewing up the back seam. I'm so sorry about that. All right, so I've got my back seam done on this tunic. So we're gonna go ahead and line that up along Mary's back, like so. And then we're gonna bring it around to the front side. And this is where you can start stitching at the top. I'm just going to make sure that those shoulder seams are nicely down and matching. So I'm going to start to whip stitch the front of the tunic together. Okay, as you come down, it will be snug, and that is okay. I'm going to pull it and continue to stitch. Double check that you're nicely lined up there. And basically you're going to be whip stitching down to this point. So I'm just going to keep going here. Every once in a while, check to see that you are fairly nicely lined up there. So that's the tunic. So now we're going to move to the tunic arms. So I'm going to put that aside for a moment. All right, moving on to the arms. I have 2 pipe cleaners. I've got my arms oriented so that I definitely have a left and a right going on. And you're going to, actually I should probably switch these. Okay, so this is the shoulder, and I'm going to put my pipe cleaner in, kind of bend it towards the base. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same. Start it there, bend it. You just want at least a little bit sticking out here, and you don't want it to protrude around that area. And I'm going to come back in now with my glue gun and fix that pipe cleaner in place. Okay, and do the same to the other side. All right, so I got both my pipe cleaners on there, so now I can flip the tops over, and I'm going to start with one of these. And as in all the other figures, I'm going to start on one end. I'm going to whip stitch around. I'm going to stop part way, start to stuff it, then continue my whip stitching and finish stuffing the arm. All right, so I've got both my arms done. So I just need to get those little hands on there. So this one, it looks like I'm probably going to have to cut that pipe cleaner down just a little bit. And that'll look good. So I'm going to stick some glue on there. Perfect. And then this one doesn't look like it needs any adjustment. That's good. All right. And the next step is to take these both, and you're going to glue one on either side so that they're facing the front. I'm just going to throw a bunch of glue in either of these arm sockets or in both of them and get those glued on there. Okay. There you go. Then the face is the next part. So I've got the bead and the markers. So for Mary, this one also has baby Jesus and Mary. So we do have a pattern here that I can show you. So I'm just drawing a center line on the stripy part of the bead, and then I'm going to draw another line perpendicular. So I've got my bit of a grid. So if you wanted to use this piece, I would take it and line it up so that the bottoms of those eyelids are lying on that horizontal line and that middle line is kind of in between. And you can use that as a bit of a guide, kind of reaching behind and draw along and get your face pretty accurate. I'm going to freehand it because I'm comfortable to do that. So I'm just going to draw into eyelids turned downwards. And then she just gets a little bit of a mouth down there. And I'm going to follow up with my black. Okay. And then if you wanted to, I don't always do this because you do risk it looking a little muddied, but you can give her like little eyelashes if you just do the tiniest little tick marks like that from the outside in. Okay, but you can see I'm already starting to bleed on those sides. So safer just to do the downturned eye. Now for the mouth, I'm going to erase around here, and I'm just going to leave it so I've got just a little bit of a guide so I know where I'm going with the red, and she just gets like a slightly open mouth. Okay, just like that. All right, moving on to Mary's hair. I have a bunch of strands, and these ones are longer strands than we've used up until now. And I've pulled them apart, and I'm just going to take some of them to start with. And I'm going to go just gently with my comb this time because I do like that curl, and leave some of it. I'll start with that, and these are going to get glued. Actually, before I do that, I do need to erase that line. So you do need to make sure that your bead dries for a long enough time that if you go to rub it, it's not going to bleed on you. And I'm going to find kind of the center where my hair goes, and that's just going to end up getting put on like this. Just going to add some glue around here. Start with those first pieces. I feel like that here didn't quite get stuck. Alright, and that first one did not get stuck on, so I'm just going to add some more in there on the side of her head. And then I'm going to do the same to the other side. So this didn't take a lot of yarn at all. Yeah, if you've got a loose piece like that, either pull it off or glue it down, or move it out of the way, which is what I just did. So that's pretty good for the front. I'm just going to show you. See, her hair is not really visible, so you're basically just putting it in there to fill in the part that you do see. I might bring this end a little forward and glue it in there. This is where I fuss and fiddle around with the hair way too much. And there's that little piece that's been bugging me, so I'm just gonna glue it down because it's bothering me. I got some glue. If you get some goo in her hair, honestly, just add a little another piece on top. That was my own fault. And just stick it over top. All right, that should work. And sometimes you do have to add more to fill in the back, but this back got filled in pretty nicely with what I've got here. So I'm not going to bother. Oh, this piece is not stuck on properly, so you do really have to watch for that. So I'm just going to add a little more in there and pull it across. We're going to take this head and make sure that you've got that neck nicely up, and you might need to twist it a little, and that's going to get glued onto there. I'm just going to, add a bit of glue on that top and put Mary in there. And she ends up with a downturned head, and in fact, I may as well bet she ends up kind of a bit crouched as well, kind of like that. Okay, and then you can decide, I am going to trim up her hair just a little bit. It's not going to be visible because of the headdress, so I'm just going to trim it like that. And the next step is to put the headdress on. So I'm folding it in half, and then I'm going to sew down this curve. Put her aside for a moment. I'm just going to start here up at the top. And if you notice, again, any stragglers like I've got there, I'm just going to cut that off because I don't want that coming into my seam. And you can also just try to push it back. Oops, there. So it's this back seam that does not have the embroidery on it that you're going to be whip stitching, and then go all the way down this edge. All right, so I've got her headscarf ready to go. So this just gets put on top like that, and then it hangs down. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue kind of on the inside here, and I'm going to push that down. So just the last couple of things to finish up on Mary are the blue scarf. So this is about 10 long, so I'll move it up here. So I'm just going to add a little notch in there, and because this is like a muslin or cotton sheeting, I can just rip it like that. And I like that rough unfinished edge on there. And then it's about 1.5 inches wide that you want. So I'm going to take that and rip it. Okay, so now I've got her scarf. So I've got it here, and I'm going to scrunch it up a little bit. Make it more interesting looking. And if you hold on to it, it will kind of wrinkle a bit on you, which is sort of what you want. And now I'm going to take it and kind of find approximately the center and pop it in underneath. And then that gets kind of woven in over her arms, like so. All right. And then the last step, I just find it easier now actually to do this at the very end, is you're gonna, her hands will get glued together like that. So I'm gonna add in just a drop of glue on this side. Glue those hands together and just hold them for a moment. And then I'm gonna bring her elbows up. It's almost like she's praying, okay? And then, as you can tell, my cotton sheeting is way too long, so I'm going to cut a little bit here. Oh, pull off that end. Okay, see how that's looking. This side I'm going to take a little bit off of as well. All the final fun stuff to get to do with these figures. All right, I kind of want her bowing a little more, so I'm going to just push her down like that. Pull this more in. Okay, I think I want this headpiece to be holding down a little more, so I'm going to throw a drop of glue under here. Again, these are all just little things you don't have to do, but you can do depending on what you're looking for, what you want in your character. I'm putting her head downward, so she's praying, and that's Mary. So this video will continue on and show you baby Jesus in the cradle. All right, on to little baby Jesus. So much like Mary, I have a face template here if you would like to use it. So again, with this bead, I'm looking for the up and down stripe side and throw in my horizontal line and then a vertical line. All right, and this is a much smaller face. So if you're using the template, then you want the bottoms of those eyes to rest along this horizontal line. And try to position this line in between and use it as a guide. I'm just going to free draw it, I guess. Okay, and then just this little dot of a mouth. All right. I try not to talk or breathe when I'm doing something this small. So those are the two eye pieces. And then his little mouth, it's almost like he's cooing a little bit. So it's like a circle, but not completely rounded because I don't want it like he's singing. Actually, that's pretty rounded, but that looks really just fine. So that's the face, and that will dry while we work on the rest. So the torso, you just have a front and a back. And this is just to give something sitting in the cradle, okay? So that you're putting into the swaddling and whatnot. So taking these two pieces, and I'm going to start at this end, and so all the way around. This doesn't get a pipe cleaner, doesn't need it, so I'm just going to start here and whip stitch around. All right, and you can see that I've thrown some stuffing into this little cavity, and I am just whip stitching along the bottom to close it up. All right, and then to finish this off, you're going to take your face, make sure it's nice and dry. You don't want to risk smearing or smudging anything, and then remove these pencil lines. As you can see, I did not wait long enough, so I did get a small smudge in there. Okay, I might just touch it up a little bit. I'm going to twist this. That little head will go over that neck. So once you got it started, you can throw on a little bead of glue. There's not really a front or a back to this body. All right, so now onto the cradle. So for the cradle, I forgot to say at the beginning, you do need some twigs from outside. If you don't have access to that, you can probably use popsicle sticks that maybe you paint, or toothpicks. Line up toothpicks on these instead of the twigs. So I'm going to take my sticks, and first of all, they're thin enough that I can just use my wire cutters, and you want to clean them up a little. You can. This one's pretty good. So I'm going to start with one of these pieces and basically cut twigs approximately the length that you need. If anything, take them a little bit longer. I'll save this because I could probably use that up in that area. And you're just going to take all of these pieces, do a line of glue, and then stick a piece of twig on there. All right. Line of glue, and then a piece of twig. And you can either wait to the end or do it as you go, but at one point you're going to want to come in here and even up those ends so that they end where the felt does. All right, so I'm going to do that for all of these pieces. All right, I'm back, and I've got a little mismatch of pieces that I had of wood, but that's okay. It's supposed to be a little rustic. So you'll see I've gone ahead and I've cleaned all these up so that the edges match the edges of the felt. And we're just going to start to build this. So the inside is going to be the felt. So this is my back piece. So I'm flipping it over, and the first step is you're going to attach these sides onto the sides. So I'm just going to go across here with some glue and attach that end on there. And do the same over here. And attach that end on there. All right, and then you're gonna come through and do now the same with the sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some glue along the bottom and position that along there. And then while you can still get in here while it's still soft, I'm gonna go ahead and glue that corner. And do the same over here. Okay, so when you're done, you should end up with a cradle similar to this. All right, so you're going to take your piece of brown felt and line the cradle with it. And if you find that too much is sticking out at the edges, you can trim it, but we can decide that afterwards. And then you throw a little bit of stuffing in the bottom, just to raise it up a little. And then you're going to take a small piece of coffee stain sheeting. So this one we had made earlier. And I'm just going to do the same thing. All these dimensions are in the pattern, in case you're wondering. So I've got this little piece, and that's going to go inside. So I may have to play with the amount of fluff I've got in the bottom there. It's sort of depending on how high I have him sitting. So my coffee stained cheesecloth, and I'm going to kind of fold it down a little bit. This is, you do need to play with this part, but you're basically going to want to glue it a bit right at the head here, just so that it's easier to swaddle them. Okay, and you're just going to come down and sort of go around the body like so. And if you want more cheesecloth, I'm sure you probably have extras, so you can always add that in. And then you want him in here with his head propped up a little bit. So see, I feel like that's not high enough. So I am going to add in a bit more fluff. And then you can decide if you want to cut this down. You can also, what I might do is actually glue it down at the edges in a moment. So, and this you can play with. I'm going to try this angle this way, just to make it a little different looking. And then put him on top. Like that. And he just sits in there, but if you want to do some gluing, you can. So what I'm going to do is I want to glue this edge down, because I think I will like that. And I'm going to do it all the way around. Okay, and I might add a little drop now on this. I think that's pretty good. So I've got Mary with the baby Jesus.